Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, ChicagoJazz.com, and this is episode 88 of Jazz This Week, live from Johnny O's, and on the show today, vocalist Petra Van Nuis. I said that correct. Yes. All right, we are back here live at Johnny O's, episode 88. Now, Petra, you have performed throughout the entire Midwest country. You have toured everywhere. Have you ever been at a hot dog stand to do a jazz show?
Never. No.
I always have to ask that question because I know what the answer is going to be, and I love it. So thanks for being on the show. Now, Petra is here because we're going to be talking about how she came to Chicago. She's originally from Cincinnati.
Correct. And
how she started in music. But she's also got a show coming up at the Jazz Showcase, January 11th through the 14th, with her Petra's Recession 7. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk all about that as well. So, before we get into the show, your show, we're in our show.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk a little bit about how you came up from Cincinnati? Because I know you've been here for quite a while. You've established your name on the scene. But
for those who can pronounce it.
For those who, like me.
Yeah, exactly.
So, how did you first come up to Chicago? What drove you up here? Was it because you were into music and this was the place to come?
Yes. An old car drove me up here. I've only had old cars.
Wow.
That's my thing.
We're really getting literal.
Yeah, we're getting literal. This
is how she came to Chicago. She drove an old car. Back up. How did you first start singing?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I've always sung my whole life. My dad was a piano technician. He worked at the Baldwin Piano and Organ Company in Cincinnati.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I grew up hearing music, not jazz though, but just, well, actually my mom had some Frank Sinatra records, but not really, mostly classical music around the house and show tunes and whatnot.
But you're getting the music into your system at that point, right? Your dad, he played piano, obviously, if he's there working at the factory.
Yeah, and he was a piano tuner, so I was always hearing pianos being tuned. So I hope that helped my intonation, but I'm not sure.
Well,
and then I ended up going to a performing arts school in Cincinnati. That was a really wonderful place. It was 4th through 12th grade, which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was one of the first performing arts schools in the U.S., so people would come from all over the country, in the world actually, and they would come to our classrooms and check us out and see what we were doing and take notes. And yeah.
How many of those performing arts schools are here in Chicago? I know there's 1 or 2, but I don't think they're from 4 till 12. I think that's a rare, but that's like prime time. That's when people are getting creative and getting into what they're going to become later in life.
Yeah, and it was really cool because it wasn't separated. Like you would think, oh, the elementary school is here and the middle school, but it was all together. So you would be passing other kids, you were in 5th grade and you'd see a senior, and it was kind of integrated, and so you were in...
So you're in 4th grade seeing seniors in high school?
Yeah, just walking down the hallway with the... which I think that was where my parents were kind of like, maybe this is a bad idea, And it kind of had a reputation at that point of being a little sketchy. It was kind of in a bad neighborhood, but that was kind of a good thing. It was kind of a rough and tumble school in a way, but the kids were kept so occupied. They kind of worked us. They had us out like doing gigs and stuff, so we didn't have time to get in trouble or get in anything bad. They had us going to school all day, going to arts classes, academic classes, and then after school, every night you were there till at least 6. Every weekend you were there, like 10 in the morning till 6.
Wow, jeez.
It was like a job.
Glad I didn't go there.
But it was cool because it really prepared you.
Yeah.
I mean, and it kind of prepared you for just what it is to be an artist, the hustle of it all, the time, all the work that the work isn't done and you have to keep.
Right.
They had us, I remember one time, or a couple times actually, it was a thing they would do, where they would be like, we're putting on a show in a week. And it was almost like a test.
Like a musical?
Yeah, and it would be like weird, and it would only be it was like a musical theater class, so it was one period of the day. So it was only a 45-minute period, and you had only 5 days to get the whole show together. And at the end of the week, you would do the... So they were kind of trying to prep you to, learn stuff quickly and,
Right. Dial it up, get it going, let's go.
Yeah, it was really, and when I think back, a fantastic experience. I know a lot of people didn't like high school, but I loved my high school.
I didn't... No comment. You're in high school, and then you ended up going to college somewhere?
I did go to college. Unlike my husband. No, he took
All right, we're going to talk about him later.
No, he was the smart one, actually. So
He's going to see this, you know.
hopefully. So I went to the College Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati.
Okay.
So, but I went there for musical theater, not for jazz. So once again, I was at that time still doing dancing and singing and acting, and I was doing shows. And then Andy did go there for 1 year. Andy Brown,
Andy
my
Brown,
husband,
guitarist. Andy Brown.
Guitarist. And then he went to the jazz program, but he dropped out after 1 year and kind of said, I'm going to do this on my own and just go out to gigs and hear music and learn that way. And I think at this time I was becoming influenced by Andy and influenced by, because we met in high school. So we were high school sweethearts. We met when we were 16 at the Performing Arts School.
Wow.
Yeah. He had moved from out of town, but he came to school. And so, I just started seeing what he did and started going to a lot of his gigs, and I just really fell in love with jazz because it was just so much more interesting than what I was doing on it, just to be honest. It's much more creative. Well,
you're working on shows, you're working on specific tunes, you're probably rehearsing the same music over and over and over and over, right?
Every movement is, every breath is
and it's got to be
planned.
exactly the same.
Yes, and I was at that point more into dancing than singing, so it was very, specific and so rehearsed. And then when I would go to Andy's gigs, I was just like, this is creative.
Yeah.
And I always kind of had a rebellious streak in me, so I was like, and I had also heard all the same, a lot of the songs that are used in jazz are from musical theater, a lot of show tunes.
100%, yeah.
So, I'd heard a lot, I knew a lot of the music, not all of it, but I knew some of the standards and whatnot, but I'd always heard them done in a musical theater way, like either real belty or, real like high, and I always sang very high and like lyrically and, all the ingenue parts. But when I heard when I started hearing all of Andy's music, he started bringing home all these recordings and working on stuff, and I just really liked the sound of the singers, the jazz singers, doing that same music. It just resonated with me so much more than the way that the musical theater singers sing it. Yeah. I always loved the tunes. I love the music, but I almost must have known something wasn't quite right with that other approach. And when I heard,
it's interesting now because when I'll go, I don't know what year it was recent, but I saw Oklahoma somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I was totally disappointed they weren't swinging Surrey with a fringe on top. I'm like, come on, let's go, man. Let's get this cooking. All right, so you're in the conservatory, you're practicing, now you're hanging out, and you're going to see Andy's gigs, going to the clubs, hanging. And did both you and Andy come up to Chicago?
We did.
Is that how you ended up coming up? So did you get your degree or did you leave?
I did get my degree.
You got your degree, okay.
I went off and I did a couple musical theater shows. I did some tours. So between missing Andy and kind of starting to get into jazz, and I had some dance injuries, I decided to quit that musical theater once and for all.
So you were like on a touring company or something?
Yeah. I did a couple of different shows around the country and whatnot. I started getting into jazz with Andy, started playing some gigs around Cincinnati, and we played there for quite a while. We stayed there till we were 27, which is kind of a little bit late. His mom.
Well, you're established. It's not late.
We were kind of itching to go. All of our friends had left. His mom actually was sick for a while, so we stayed with her. And so then she died, and then we ended up deciding, okay, now we really want to get out of town. Like, we've been waiting to go. Yeah. So we moved to New York first, because that's what any young, aspiring person does. But we were only there for about a year and a half.
It's a longer time than most people hang out in New York.
It wasn't that long. But we had a really good time, but we had come to visit Chicago, and when we came to visit, we had a really good time. Our Cincinnati friend, Joe Policastro, who plays bass, had moved to Chicago, so we saw him, and we saw another friend of ours, Nick Fryer. I don't know if you remember him. He was a guitarist around here for a minute. He had moved here. So we kind of had some built-in family and friends, and we saw some great music when we came to visit. We actually saw Paulinho and Gragina behind the bar at the Green Mill, and it made an incredible impression on us. We saw Judy Roberts down at the Intercontinental, and
she was still there then.
Yeah. And so we just, we had just a really fun visit, and we just kind of it was like a flash moment. Like, we should come here.
So now you are you and Andy play duos together. You obviously play with quartets. Andy plays a lot. He plays at the Mill. He plays weekends at the Showcase and everywhere else, along with yourself. But you have Petra's Recession 7.
Yes.
And that got started, what, about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe?
Believe it or not, 10 years ago.
10 years ago?
10 years ago.
Wow.
Time flies.
Time flies. So tell us a little bit about it. Obviously, it's
I feel
recession
like an old
music.
person.
You're younger than me, I believe, so let's calm down here a minute. So you got the thing started, and it's obviously recession music. Oh, wait, you started it during the recession.
Yes, bingo. We started
See, I'm not that dumb, folks.
connecting the dots.
It took me a minute. So you started it during the recession, but it's based off of what, the 30s, right? 30s kind of music?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that was just kind of a catchy name in order to get a gig. But yes. Well, actually, I was on the phone with Dave Gimolo when we were setting up our very first gig, and I called him because I really wanted to play more of that style of music, more like, early swing, traditional jazz kind of stuff. So I called him up. I was bold. I was like, hey, your website says, that now he does have some more traditional jazz there, but back then he really didn't. And it said, on the website, it said something like Dixieland, swing, avant-garde, bebop. And I was like, wait a minute. You don't really have that much of this.
You're calling Dave.
I kind of called him out. And I said, hey, I have this band and I really want to play there. And he said, okay, great. And I told him all the people who were in it. In the band, and he said, oh, that sounds good. And then he said, what's the name of the band? And I was kind of just
you're like, well, I can't believe I got this far in a conversation here. Wait a minute.
And I kind of thought of it in the moment like that. So
and he liked it, obviously.
Yeah, because it was actually September 2008 when we did our first gig, which coincided right with the beginning of the recession, obviously.
Yep.
So
all right, so let's talk a little bit about the personnel. Who's in the band, and what's the repertoire we're talking about? Obviously, you're the vocalist.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm singing, and then Eric Schneider's on reeds.
Great saxophonist, clarinetist.
Yes,
one of the
amazing.
best.
Yeah.
I know you're watching. Okay, go ahead.
Russ Phillips was on the trombone.
Russ is awesome.
And he also sings a few numbers, which is really great.
Yeah.
The great Bobby Ojeda is
Dynamite.
playing trumpet, Dynamite.
Yep.
Andy Brown, my husband's on guitar.
Yep.
Danny DiLorenzo's on the bass, and Bob Rummage on the drums.
Great band.
Yeah. It's a really swinging band.
And so, with repertoire-wise, is it from the 20s, 30s, or kind of a mixture of everything?
Kind of a mixture, but we do basically, I would say most of the music is the 20s through maybe the early 40s.
Okay.
So it's kind of that early swing period, and it's kind of just a freewheeling band.
January 11th through the 14th. Of course, all the information is at Petra Sings. Petra Sings.
And I swing, but
and you swing, but it's petrasings.com. We'll link it up below.
Okay.
And, of course, jazzshowcase.com.
Yeah.
So there's parking right in the back, $5, Jazz Showcase right there on Plymouth and Polk. All right. Now, I have 3 picks.
Yes.
And I always have to do a disclaimer. So my disclaimer is that these are my 3 picks of the week. These are my opinion of if you're a casual music fan, a hardcore jazz fan, or a tourist coming into town who wants to check something out and is interested in seeing a famous venue or experience the Chicago jazz scene, but you're not quite sure what to see. These 3 picks, I believe, you will enjoy no matter what you're looking for. But these by no means, disclaimer alert, these by no means are the only shows happening. There are tons of shows happening each week, Monday through Sunday. So, of course, get all the information at chicagojazz.com. So there's my disclaimer. Now, speaking of the Green Mill,
yes,
let's go to the Green Mill. Every Thursday night, Alan Gresik and his Swing Shift Orchestra. I have not mentioned this, and I am apologizing now, Alan. He's been there for, oh my God, I would say almost 20 years, maybe more than 20 years.
Yeah.
Every Thursday night from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., Alan Gresik's Swing Shift Orchestra. It is a throwback orchestra. I'm sure you've seen it a ton of times. They do a radio show in the middle of it. Yep. Swing dancing is happening. They move the tables and everything out of the way. It is an experience. And if you want to see some vintage music in a vintage club, I mean, this is what they used to play back there in the Green Mill when Al Capone was sitting over in table 1. So that's what it is. Alan Gresik's Swing Shift Orchestra, Green Mill, every Thursday night, 9 p.m. We've got Winter's Jazz Club. I know you're familiar with Winter's Jazz Club. I believe you've played there once or twice in the past. So Winter's Jazz Club, and I know you know these awesome musicians. Yeah. Chris Madsen Quartet is performing with Alyssa Allgood as the vocalist, and they are doing a tribute to Thelonious Monk on January 12th, Friday night, January 12th. Cool. Winter's Jazz Club right there in Streeterville. Awesome place. I know I talk about it every single week, but I want to make sure everybody gets out and sees this and experiences this club, especially in January, because it's important to support live music in January and February, where only the music fans are heading out to see stuff. So, January 12th, Winter's Jazz Club, Chris Madsen Quartet with Alyssa Allgood, tribute to Thelonious Monk's music. Finally, an early warning. Jazz at Logan Center, they have been on fire this year. In the fall season, it's been incredible, the shows that they've had. Now, we're moving into the second half of the season. You don't want to miss this. Rene Marie is going to be there January 19th at Jazz at the Logan, right there on the University of Chicago campus. Petra, it has been a pleasure.
It has been a pleasure.
I'm going to enjoy some fries, some hot dogs.
Yes, you've been waiting long enough.
I know. She's actually going to a gig now. That's how she's the hardest working vocalist here at Johnny O's. So she's heading to a gig right now. Okay, as usual, there are lots of things happening around town. So I only picked 3. So if you have a show coming up that I didn't mention, leave a note in the comment, DM me, send me an email. We'll try to get it on the show. Maybe we'll even have you on the show. If I don't know about it, I can't push it out there to everybody else. And of course, there are tons of things happening all throughout the Chicagoland area. So hopefully I will see you somewhere around town this weekend. But if not, hopefully one of us will see you somewhere out on the scene.
Yes.